will produce the outcome that our group seeks. While we appreciate your efforts on our behalf, the proposal you have put forth to conduct a survey of just 200 residents does not accomplish what we are seeking. While we agree that there are many additional issues that residents might also want to weigh in on, such as the use of the tennis courts, the size of the structure, the type of meeting rooms, etc., we think a town survey at this time is too late. We appreciate that this is not an easy time for you on the council, but we urge you to stay focused on fulfilling your duty to provide political leadership and representing the broader issues of interests of the residents. The best solution clearly lies in allowing a fair and democratic process to resolve the continuing controversy. Towards that goal, we hope you will not go ahead with a survey, but instead will push to have the council reconsider placing the library location vote on the council's agenda. We will be starting to collect signatures on a petition for a special council meeting, and will present them to you as soon as we have a sufficient number available. Thank you for your consideration. Dee Dee Fisher, Charles Rosala, Rose Howe, Bob and Sherman, Valerie, Kent, Janet, Tom, Rachel, Sherry, John, Earl, Mary, Bill, Stuart, John, Jim, Jack, Peter, et al. Like I said, there's 90 sidebar names of residents.
I didn't meet with 90 people.
Okay. So,
just to be clear.
So, should I keep on? There's just
well, you've got them all, so you might as well read the ones that people sent.
So this one was sent this afternoon at 1:34 p.m. To all the council members. And it is from Gail Alberti, 377 Fletcher Drive, Atherton. Dear council members, I've lived in Atherton for 26 years as an adult and was an Atherton resident for my entire childhood. Though I rarely visit our park, I have been and continue to be a regular visitor at our library. For many years, I have visited the library at least once a month and often more. I am there at varied hours on varied days, and never have I had any sense that the library was overcrowded or overutilized. The library structure itself is such an important part of our history and very much in keeping with the character of our town. It is our library, and I don't understand the town's quest to attract a wider audience by expanding and moving the library, especially when what we have in place means so much to so many residents. There is a dearth of public places in our town, and nowhere else can one can go and find a peaceful haven for browsing, reading, and borrowing a vast expanse of reading materials. Our library has the wonderful feel and ambience of a small town treasure. It is so very user-friendly and sized correctly for the number of residents we have here in Atherton. What audience is it that you want to attract? Redwood City has an impressive newer library, which I have visited on a few occasions. On those occasions, I have noticed a majority of families lining up to check out movies and other media. Is this what we want for our new library? I don't think a new library is warranted or in the best interest of Atherton residents. My vote is to leave the library where it is and leave it as it is. If there are minor changes that would improve it for whatever reason, make those changes, but please do not change the character, usability, or ambience of our town treasure. And
so are these pertaining to the vote on the survey or the library in general? Because we're talking about the survey, and I think that that was the one that Charles has already voted for.
I'm sorry, I didn't do a good job of choosing that. So there's just one more, actually. And this is from Deborah Holvick, 398 Fletcher Drive. And she wrote this afternoon, or this morning at 11:30. Dear council members, I am opposed to building a new library. Libraries are dinosaurs. Leave our park alone. Give the money to Menlo Atherton High if it has to go somewhere. $18,000 for 200 phone calls? I'll do it for $100, or better yet. Have volunteers come one evening to your chambers or to a local real estate company after business hours and make the calls. Done in 20 minutes. It's a one-question survey. Quote, are you in favor of a new library built in the park? Either they are in favor or opposed. That's it. One answer to one question. Simple, easy, done. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. I think a town-wide vote would be better and more accurate. Or you could save money and have your 200 calls be 800 calls, and then you'd have a much better result. You could advertise in the newspaper that the calls will be made on such and such a date so residents know that it's coming and can be home if they want to weigh in. And then she thought about it a little bit more and then sent another email that outlines her ideas of how a cost-saving idea to get all Atherton households' opinion on whether or not to build the library or not in the park. Have volunteers do all the work. Number one, send to all 2,330 Atherton households a one-page form asking if they, quote, for or against the building of the new library in Albert Palmer Park. Give us a yes or no answer to one question. Keep it simple and not hire a fancy firm to make sure all the questions are fair. Number two, residents who wish to respond, mail back the form with their signature and address filled in, and the volunteers tally the results. You're done. Cheap, fast, thorough. Even if you limit the number of responses to only 2 people per household, 2 places to sign with 1 vote for each signature, it is better and cheaper than any other idea I've seen. The honor system that both voters would be of legal voting age. Most people will comply honestly.
If she's single, so much the merrier.
Thank you very
She
much.
said you could have a printed article in the newspaper announcing the forthcoming, but you know, she was brainstorming, you know, trying to get it. So those are the only letters that I received this afternoon.
Thank you. Any other public comments, written or otherwise? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment section. So we'll bring back to council for additional discussion after we have heard the public speak and actually had some very unique ideas and some volunteers to actually assist us with this. Jerry, it looks like you want to say something.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead with asking Godby to handle a town-wide ballot of all registered voters on the question of whether or not the library should be located in Holbrook Park.
Well, if we could have a discussion on that, I mean,
Well, to be seconded, then discussion, yes.
Well, I'll second that, but I think I would rather have a full vote, an official vote, rather than having Godby do it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think just for discussion purposes, when you say a townwide ballot, I think you're really saying a townwide mailed survey?
Yes, meaning to all registered voters.
Yeah, it's a mailed survey. It's a mailed survey. A ballot is technically an election,
well,
so we have to be careful to distinguish the two.
I call it a ballot, but to poll the residents through a mail-in process that would go out to each registered voter.
So we're in the discussion. So,
let me just say one more thing.
sure.
I'm guessing, but I bet that could be done for a third of the $18,000.
Speculation, I don't know, I'm not a survey guy. However, I do know many mail surveys have about a 1 or 3% return rate, and whereby that low return rate would render the survey really inconsequential, not representative. Whereas a mail, my understanding is on this call, which is one of the reasons why, you know, I suggested it, was that they call, you know, they look at the demographics, match up the telephone lists with the address, and they try and get a wide range of people, and they continue to call within the demographics that they've identified until they get the right number of voters, whether it's 200, 300, 400, 800, whatever it is. And they would, of course, give a preamble to the discussion to make sure that the person knows what they're voting on, as opposed to just coloring it in and sending it in, which is the reason why I thought the telephone survey was as appropriate, and why mail surveys often don't give you any real information, or could be easily skewed, as Paul indicated. I think Paul brought up some very valid points with regards to the questioning and shenanigans that can go along with questioning and skewing and things like that. And I think that there's there's ways that we could probably try and make sure that the questions are balanced and the questions are fair. As far as the mail-in, you know, and it's unfortunate that Godby isn't here, because they could have spoken to us a little bit about the benefits or the drawbacks of one versus the other. But my thoughts are, a mail ballot just doesn't work or doesn't give you a true demographic data. That's my 2 cents.
I can tell you what they said at a telephone call.
We're not taking any more public comments. So the public comment is done.
The telephone calls actually give people more pressure to give a socially desirable response, whereas a mail survey would. So I did have that conversation with them.
And could you define socially desirable?
Based on what you hear from the media. That's the way I take it.
So the survey can shape the, how the survey question is asked might shape the answers, what you said.
I honestly feel that we've heard from so many residents here tonight who've spoken. I think the vast majority have called for a vote rather than a survey. A mailing survey is not a vote. And I think to put it to the vote of the people is really the only way it's going to heal our community.
Okay, well, the topic that's on the agenda is to approve or disapprove a survey. We can amend the item to talk about different manners of doing a survey, but the topic that is here and that has been properly noticed has been one of doing a survey. And the council can say they would like to do a survey, they'd like to change the survey, or they would like to not do a survey. And those are the decisions that I understand we are allowed to talk about as a council and vote on.
That's my motion, is that we do a 100% survey by mail. And I think that the question is, to me, only one question. Do you want to have the library in the park, yes or no? I don't think we ought to get into a lot of other issues or a lot of other questions. I think it ought to be kept simple. I like the idea that we entertain. I don't know how you do this process-wise, but again, Godby may have a way of doing it, of getting some pro and con arguments to accompany that question that's mailed to all registered voters in town.
So if I understand what your motion, and your vision of the townwide 100% mail survey with one question, yes or no, would be identical to a vote, except it would not be a binding resident vote.
Well, I think the council, I would hope the council would be bound by whatever the outcome is. I tend to think that because the issue is so hot and I'm sure that would get a lot of publicity in terms of that this sort of polling was going to take place, I think that the return would be quite a bit more than 1%. And I don't know how a question that's put that simply, yes or no, library in the park, can be considered a biased question or skew the results or anything like that at all.
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, the council cannot be bound by a survey. Legally, you can only be bound there's a process for submitting an initiative to the voters, which can be binding or non-binding. But only a vote can be binding. You can't have a survey bind you because you're all elected to have independent judgment, except where you give that away to the voters. And I think you'd have a real problem with that. I understand the concept, but I think if it's either a survey and you live or die by what comes back to you and then vote on it, or it's an election, in which case you can tie yourselves if you want to be.
Jerry, I really want to support you in this, but only because I want to get something done. But I honestly don't think a townwide survey is going to do it. I think that if we don't take this out to the ballot, to the residents to have an official vote, they're going to feel like they're being hoodwinked or somehow,
you'll have to bring that back if you want to.
Right, I'll have to bring it, yeah, no, I understand,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
so
we
it's
can
not
talk
on the
about-
agenda, but I'm just saying,
I think
Right, so I
the
think-
Councilmember Lewis can say, I can't support this because this is what has to happen.
well, that's what I was trying to do. And you're trying to silence me.
I'm not trying to silence you, I'm trying to stay within the rules,
No, you're trying to silence me.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
I'd
typically.
like
not having
Mr.
discourse
Mayor?
along those lines.
Can I say a few words?
Yes.
You know, Huffington vote, it says yes or no.
Mr. Dobby, we're not speaking about a vote.
No, no, okay, all right, I'm gonna say, and, sorry, I apologize.
Right, no,
If a
discussion.
survey is done properly, and if it is done, if the questions are written by somebody who's totally objective, I believe, as far as tonight goes, that we can obtain a very large amount of worthwhile information. I think that the problem with many surveys is that they can be, especially political surveys, you know, if the questions are written wrongly, you'll get the wrong answer. If the questions are written correctly, you'll get the right answer. And the same thing with this. So I believe that if this survey is done and that somebody or some group is picked to prepare the questions totally objectively, not anybody in this council, for instance, then I believe this can be very worthwhile, and I think it can be convincing to the town. So I would say, as I can't talk about other things, that I would go ahead and I would like to see more people than 200 people involved in this survey, but I would go ahead and support doing a survey on this.
Okay, so, I think Jerry had made a motion, I don't think it got seconded.
Elizabeth seconded.
I'm sorry, I thought you changed.
Well, I did, I said I would love to second it, if it, but if what he was talking about was the vote, I'm sorry.
So you didn't really second it then?
Well, what we have in front of us that we can only rule on is the Godby contract. So either we let this die, or let Councilmember Carlson's motion die, and then another motion could be made to approve it in a less robust way, or we try to go forward with at least getting something done with 100% resident mail survey. I prefer a ballot vote, but it's obvious that will be a 2 to 3 vote, and it'll fail anyway. So I second your motion.
Okay, discussion on 100%, I assume it was mail. Mail, ballot, vote, or ballot, excuse me, survey, mail survey done by Godby.
To registered voters.
To all residents,
Just to clarify.
all registered voters, okay.
Why registered? That was the motion.
Any discussion on that?
Not out there.
No, I know, I'm talking
A
here.
hand, when you said that, a hand.
I call for the question, please.
Excuse me?
I call for the question, please.
Okay, my comment is, I'll say my piece. I don't think that mail-in ballots work. I have not seen them work. And so I can't support a mail vote. I can support a larger,
Mail survey.
yeah, sorry, a mail survey. I can understand how everybody else kept messing up on it. So apologies to others since I make the same mistake. I'm not in favor of a mail survey. I just don't think that there may or may not be understanding. A person may or may not be the right person. I realize that could happen also on a a phone call. It may not be, you know, the son or daughter home from college could fill it out and shoot it in. There's no guarantee. I'd rather see people walk around and knock on doors and hold them that way, as opposed to, and I don't know what the cost of that would be, but I just cannot see a mail-in vote ballot survey. Okay, good. That's my comment. Any other?
I call for the question.
Okay.
Which means we should vote.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody else had a comment if they wanted to make it, okay? Okay, all in favor of the Jerry's motion to do a mail survey to 100% of the Atherton-based voter population?
Registered voters.
Registered voters, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
And I'm going to abstain. Fails, okay, so now there's the item that's on the agenda is the dial-in vote. Survey.
Mayor, I think the packet says that for $18,000 you can get 200, contact 200 parties. I don't think we have information, if you're thinking about anything greater than that, in terms of cost to consider.
My understanding is Teresa got a letter that had numbers for a higher number, but wasn't it?
Yes.
Did you send an email out?
Yes. So, they're not confident that they can reach 400 people. They think the max would be 300, and that would cost about $1,400 more.
Can we go ahead and vote on this?
All right, so I'd like to propose that that we approve what was the measure that I put forward to get more input into the city council to make a final decision, and increase the voter population to 400. I think that's the number you quoted.
300.
You can try for 400.
So it was 300 that they didn't think they could get, or?
They think 300 is the max. Responses, 300 responses.
Okay.
So to get 300 responses, we'll have to talk to
300, okay. 300.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Discussion, please.
Oh, sure.
I think what you're about to do is going to add fuel to the fire. I don't think it's going to put anything at rest. I think that the comments were made earlier, I think are very, very apropos, that those who are not surveyed are going to be unhappy, discontent, that the fact that their voice has not been heard. I don't think you're going to put to rest the question as to whether or not the survey is unbiased. Council has to make the final vote on this survey. And I think the suggestions were made earlier on that because of the split council, there's going to be suspicion as to whether or not the survey is really unbiased. And I think also the comment earlier on that many people rely upon cell phones and being able to really make use of the demographic statistical survey approach to get as many as 300 or 400 registered voters here in the town is going to be a very, very difficult, if any one.
I've always said from the very beginning, starting in 2010 when this project started, that I will be in favor of whatever the residents want, as long as we have a good resident input in the process. I would support whatever they decided, wherever they wanted to put the library, how big or small, how tall or whatever. And I know that the Library Steering Committee has done heroics trying to get people to come to public meetings, sent out and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing, and the money just keeps getting spent. The residents of Atherton do not come to join the public meetings. You have to go to them. You have to go to their small neighborhood meetings and get their input. They don't come out for large meetings. And that has been proven. So the only way that we can get all the residents to have an opportunity in a very democratic way is to allow them to vote in an official election, yes or no, do they want to move their library to the park?
So, my final comment before we vote is the following. We didn't have to even say, let's try and do a survey. The council had already voted. The council was moving forward. Excuse me? And so, you know, my hope was to try and get more unity, and obviously that is not working. But I think it is time to move on with making a decision and moving forward with this. So, so I'm going to, unless there's more conversation, I'm going to call for the vote. The vote on the survey with 300 residents. Okay. Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Fails. Okay, motion fails. Moving on. Moving on to item number 22.
See you, Peter.
Okay. It failed, 3-2. It failed, 3-2.
Are you the fellow that was on the planning commission as well?
Good to see you.
Okay. Item 22. Deborah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council, members of the public. The item before you here is to discuss authorizing paying down on a loan or an obligation that the city has with the public employees retirement system. It's a topic that has been brought forward to you in the past. Also a topic that the Finance Committee has researched in the past, and there are definite benefits to paying down this obligation. The majority of the benefits have to do with the fact that the PERS is charged as 7.5% interest, which will be adjusted to 7.5% interest next year. However, if we pay off the obligation, we'll have significant savings, as stated in your staff report. Staff's recommendation at this point, after reviewing the budget and the fund balance policies and where we would be at the end of fiscal year 2012-13, is that paying off the safety fund, side fund obligation would be our recommendation to do today, to do now, before June 30th. The actuary at PERS has given us an estimate of what that would cost us. It would be $1.2 million, and it would save us in the first year, it would save us a minimum of $282,000 in the first year, because the rates would be reduced by 13.5% for the safety plan. We also recommend that the town pay off the miscellaneous plan obligation, but to do that a year from now after looking at the budget for next year. So our recommendation would be to set aside part of fund balance by calling it committed fund balance, so that next year you would have it available if you chose to pay it off in the next year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this topic.
Well, my first comment is thanks, Deborah, for this. This is really important that this council and with your leadership is stop kicking this can down the road, so to speak. We're taking care of our debts, and we're paying a little bit of money up front when we can, so that we can provide improved revenue or improved revenue position and fund position, so that we can make sure that we have the high level of services that we have, not just today, but also downstream. And so thank you very much for your efforts and for the thought process you put into this and the recommendation that you've made.
Yeah, thanks. This came up to the Finance Committee, and I think that it's a very good financial decision to pay this off. It saves us a lot of money. And just from a cash viewpoint, I think roughly we'll put $800,000 back into the reserves this year. So as far as we save $200,000 next year, so that's roughly, $1 million of what we would have done. So in other words, if we pay this off, 1.2 million, we're really only going to be have a very small difference as far as the deletion of our cash reserve. So I think from that viewpoint, we also decided to postpone the next year's, because we didn't need to do it and there wasn't much of a savings.
Deborah, could you clarify some of the numbers of savings, because they don't seem, Councilmember Dolby said, they don't seem to be the same as what you were telling me earlier. Okay.
I think Councilmember Dobby is speaking about the fund balance reserves. And so he's speaking to the fact that in your budget, that is the next item, there's set aside both amounts, the entire $1.9 million. So he's saying that if we don't pay off the miscellaneous amount, we have $700,000 in fund balance left over. I think that's what he's speaking to.
It seemed to me that he was saying that would be a savings.
No, I didn't say it was savings. I talked about the reduction in the town's cash. And if we do it this way, there will not be a significant reduction in town's cash, which is something we're always interested in.
Right.
Question? Deborah, could you clarify the timing on why this should be done sooner than later, in terms of the coppers changing the assumed rate of interest on their fund from 7 3/4 down to 7 1/2? If we wait longer on this beyond a certain point, wouldn't that affect the balance as well?
This amount is calculated the rate that we pay for the side fund amortization is calculated annually, and it's always based on the prior year's information, prior year actuarial data. So PERS has made some adjustments to their assumptions, one being the interest rate changing from 7.75 to 7.5. That will increase the rate so that they can receive the same amount of payoff at a lower interest rate, but that will not hit our rate calculations until 13-14. So it's a year delay in the numbers. So the real savings in paying it off is that we do have the money set aside right now. It would be prudent to reduce our rates for safety employees by 13.5%, and then we could assume more of the present value savings the earlier you pay it off.
Sounds like a good deal.
Deborah, on page 4 of 9,
At the very top, you show two different accounts, the building reserve and the 15% emergency reserve. Isn't that $625,000 figure just the building reserve?
That is correct.
You don't show the 15% emergency reserve.
The 15% emergency reserve. I can tell you exactly what that is. That is, thank you for pointing that out, council member. You're right, there is a missing number in there. The 15% emergency reserve is $1.63 million.
Okay.
So we still have that in our fund balance.
All right, because I couldn't understand why you had these two categories and you didn't show the amount, and I wondered what happened to that amount. It should be in there.
Yeah, the 20% reserve is about 2.2, and the 15% reserve is 1.6.
All right.
And so then it will leave, if we just set aside the miscellaneous obligation, as Councilmember Dawes said, that's 700, you have about $705,000 of available spending.
I thought, gee, if you don't have that amount in there, then we're losing a lot of money and we have a big problem. Okay. So it's basically a 5-year amortization on the 1.2 million before we have more than a total payback. It's about 1.4 million to be paid back.
The safety plan is a 5-year amortization, and the miscellaneous plan is an 8-year amortization.
And we actually get a 1.4 million back over the 5 years by my calculation. It's a good deal. All right.
Okay, sorry, we had some logistics concerns.
Did you see that there was a figure left out? The 1.63 for the 15% emergency reserve.
I had a pre-briefing on this, so.